Sorry, this has turned into just me criticising you instead of the film. Sorry about that.
Welcome back to the Modern Horror Stories podcast with Jamie, Alex and Dave. And today we're going to be talking about the 1999 movie Audition, directed by Takashi Miike. Who would like to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I'll go for it. So this is the third time that I've watched this film. I remember watching it when I was about 17 and it absolutely terrified me. But I was just so fascinated by it. So Aoyama is a widower. He's got a son, and one day his son suggests to him that he should try and find a new wife. So instead of doing something normal, he decides to set up an audition for a role in a film, but in fact he's trying to find the perfect woman. And he meets this very demure, very mindful girl called Asami, and everything seems fine until, of course, it doesn't. So I think this film, it's endlessly fascinating to me. That's the reason that I can watch it 3 times over. And I think what's so fascinating to me is the politics of it. I can never quite put my finger on it. I never know whether I'm watching something misogynistic or if I'm watching misogyny being sent up. I think I'm watching misogyny being sent up, but it's that ambiguity that makes it so compelling. So I just absolutely adore this film. There are a few little things that maybe I'd change about it, but we can get onto that tomorrow, I think, with our things we'd change about Audition. Jamie, what did you reckon to it?
Yeah, I have to say I struggled as well with the line, is this misogynistic or not? And I had no idea what was coming later in the film. So the bulk of the film, it feels very misogynistic. And I felt really uncomfortable. That whole premise with the audition and these sort of slightly older men in positions of power preying on younger women in positions of not power. I felt so uncomfortable watching it, especially because it was made, over 20 years ago. And I thought maybe the filmmakers think this is normal and this is okay. And so I was just sat there like squirming throughout the film, not because of the horror, but because of that element of it. And in terms of the horror itself, that was brilliant. I don't think I've ever seen such graphic and such realistic violence. It was really intense. And, I was watching it in full HD on a VR headset, so I was right up close to the action. And it still looked really realistic. And I was really thinking, have they actually just done this to a human? It was really, really effective work on the, I'm hoping, props and prosthetics and so on. And the film, the heart of the film is Aoyama's relationships with various characters. So his colleague at work, his son, Asami, his housekeeper, his receptionist, and those are played so well that every single one of those interactions either has lightness or dark or a bit of both. And there's so much in there, and it's so well acted that it's just amazing to watch. And the bulk of the film is just watching this person going through his life and his interactions with people, and it's just amazing to watch. And yeah, I think it's a brilliantly made film that made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. I think it's a great film. I've also watched it 3 times. The first time, I kind of rated it a little lower, and then as I've revisited it, my rating's gone up a bit. And I was very trepidatious regarding the horror that was going to come at the end. I'd been warned it was going to make my skin crawl a little bit, which it did. And I agree with Jamie. He's done really, really well. It's not super graphic as you might see in a film like the new Saw movie, where I've seen people chopped into 100 bits pretty convincingly. I think it's the simplicity of it that makes it so real.
She what's amazing about I'm not going to spoil the details of that final sequence, but I think what's amazing about Asami's what she does is how delicate she is with it, and how sort of how careful, like, and it's quite sort of, yeah, and that's part of the horror, I think, is that delicacy.
Yeah, she has a catchphrase which I think will stay with you a little bit afterwards. I don't know if that's not a spoiler, is it really?
No, I don't think so. I think no, it's just a catchphrase is probably not doing it justice, because it's sort of it's a bit more than that, and that makes it sound cheap when in fact it's terrifying. So, sorry, this has turned into just me criticizing you instead of the film. Sorry about that.
I don't feel it says quite as misogynistic as you guys portrayed it. I didn't feel it was. I mean, it was. Don't get me wrong, but we briefly discussed this before, and there was one sequence which I wanted to go back and revisit, which was the audition. And when I rewatched the audition, I realized that the main character, the protagonist, he doesn't actually say anything during the audition. Except right at the beginning, the guy who's kind of set up the whole thing, it's the other guy's idea. He says, "How are you feeling?" And Ayama says, "I feel like a criminal." And so I feel like he's doing something that's he knows isn't right, but I don't see him as a bad guy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you there. He's not a bad person. I think he's dragged into this, and his friend, I do think, is a bad person. Yoshikawa, I do think is I found pretty reprehensible. But no, I don't think the film would work if I didn't have sympathy for him at the start.
And I also think the events of the last 20 years in Hollywood has made everything seem a lot worse. I mean, it is bad in today's space. I don't think it was meant to be quite as dark and manipulative at the time. I think that sequence was meant to be a little lighthearted. That's what I think the director intended.
Well, this is something that I wondered. Were they intending to highlight a problem in filmmaking and sort of have a sort of triumphant retribution against it, or was it just sort of incidental? It was just a means to an end in making this film. I'm really curious to know what.
I think both. I mean, auditions are quite silly things, really. The entertainment industry is not particularly
forgiving.
Sorry,
not forgiving.
It's not. Yes, absolutely. It's not a forgiving industry, and it's full of bad behavior. Although it's quite moralistic at times, it's full of bad behavior, and I feel like you see the good and the bad within the audition. Not every audition that you see is awful, but some of the comments are not so good.
Jamie, do you know how Dave and I first met?
I think I do.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It was an audition.
It's an audition, yeah.
It went better than the one in the film. It was, I would say, as auditioners go, Dave was very, very good. I didn't feel in any way kind of looked at in a weird way. He was great. Well done, Dave. Yes. Yeah, we're slowly getting better in this industry, hopefully.
I like the way how Alex early on just criticised me, and now he's trying to praise me.
Yeah, no, I thought I ought to row back a little bit.
The interesting thing I found out afterwards is that the director made this film in 3 weeks, which I thought was really incredible. Yeah, it blew my mind. He has a regular crew who know how he works, but even so, to create that piece of that movie in 3 weeks is just insanely. It's like a work of genius, I think.
Yeah,
to create that in 3 weeks. that year, I think he made 6 films. So.
That is incredible to make a film in 3 weeks and have people discussing it for 25 years. I mean, yeah, what an incredible sort of legacy for a film to have.
Yeah.
I mean, we often say how, although we are attached to the entertainment industry, we haven't made a film. I would love to be in that mindset where you make a film every 3 weeks. I think it'd be a great skill build. And all the decisions he must have made must have been very instinctive.
I mean, it is, as a film, it's how a lot of the images make you feel. I think that is a lot of what the film is. There's not necessarily a huge amount of narrative or plot. It is, a lot of it is about how you react to some of these strange images. Sometimes they're images that seem like they're non sequiturs. And I think, yeah, all of that can only be made by a filmmaker who's working on instinct. Because if you had more than 3, you'd end up over-intellectualizing every single shot. I read a quote from Kim Newman, and he was saying that he preferred the film to the book on the basis that the film has that ambiguity. Whereas the original book, you really went into a hell of a lot of detail about Asami's background and backstory. And I think the film's right to just work with those images and have these little ideas, the suggestion of a backstory, more than a complete fleshed out thing. And I think it makes sense that it was done in 3 weeks. That sort of seems to be why it's such a good film.
And we talked about Ring recently, and Ring, I loved the first time I saw it, but revisiting it, I got less out of it, whereas this film, I got a lot more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think Ring spells a lot of stuff out for you, whereas Audition does not. And I suppose it's just down to the preference of who's in the audience, really. But yeah, in terms of rewatches, I completely agree. I think Audition's a much easier film to or not easier necessarily, but a film that can be rewatched and you still get a lot out of it.
Usually we give our scores at the beginning, but we haven't today. So let's reveal how we felt with this film. And has that, Jamie? I remember we talked briefly about it a few days ago. Do you think your score might change?
I feel like it's creeping up. I feel like it's more of an 8 now than when I wrote this piece of paper. Yeah, I'm sure if I rewatched it, which I'm not in a hurry to do, just because it's an experience. But I mean, it is a brilliant film, and I think it's well worth watching if you can stomach the things. Different things to stomach for different people, but but yeah, it's beautifully made, and I think my score could certainly be an 8, if not, probably not an 8.5. Maybe an 8.5.
9,
no, maybe 10. Maybe 10.
So if you've got views on Audition, why don't you leave your comments below this video? Or even better, join us tomorrow where we're going to be talking about how we would make Audition even better. So hopefully see you then.